So my wife Cindy's here. She'll be monitoring the sound um, and the comments that come through, and we'll. And here she is.
Hi,
There she
everybody.
is.
Sorry, I'm not a technical whiz either, so you just have to put up with Michael's talent, and that should be good enough.
We'll get into it pretty soon, so you don't waste more of your time. This is I had a bit of an introduction slide I was going to put up here, and was going to just show a couple of things based on what's going on with you folks. And one of them is this particular thing tonight, and those are the stream codes and the Facebook uh, place there. If you should have gotten that by now, of course. And then the the announcement down below there. I'm going to be doing a 2 day online workshop coming up October 29th and 30th. So you can uh, go to the website and sign up for that, and that'll be a lot of fun. We'll do it, from your comfort of your home. And then the last thing on there, the I thought was worth noting, is that I got the note that you are still accepting entries into the national exhibit deadline October 15th. So that's a good thing to note. And then there's some other things that Carol's going to pass along that I will relay to you a little later. So anyway, those are just some of the things that are happening in your world out there. And of course, we have people joining from all over. Um, let's see. We got some from Texas, of course, that's where we are. We've got people from lots of various places saying hi and jumping in. And we'll take a look at those notes and chats as we go here. Um, this is Carol. Here she gets a chance to actually talk. You can, Carol, if you want to put your notes in, your messages in these little chats, I'll be glad to pop those up when I see them. So. Um,
Michael, would you address the fact that
This
it's a
says the
little bit out
sound
of
is
sync?
out of sync, hearing YouTube and Facebook not together. Well, no, they wouldn't be exactly together if you're using one or the other. Um, Hi, Laurie. Um, if you're using both of them, it's not going to work. You need to close one of them or mute one of them. They're not going to be in sync. They just don't. They stream out at different times, um, and so. Anyway, that's just the technical stuff. Sorry about all that. Um, let's just get on to this painting we're going to do. Now, I told you I was going to do the lighthouse, and I'm trying to remember the name of it now. It's not the, I called it the Pacific Grove light, but it's Point something. Forgotten. Anyway, this is the lighthouse out there, not too far from where you are. And Cindy and I spent a nice week there, just enjoying that part of the world, going to Big Sur and just enjoying the area. It was lovely. And so this photo I took, and interestingly, that lighthouse is set back quite a ways and in the middle of, pretty much in the middle of a golf course, the way it looks to me. And I did a little Photoshop. I moved the embankments and the waterfront, the shore, and the cliffs into a position that would be more paintable for me, just a better composition, more interesting. So I've done a little Photoshop manipulation to get this photo the way it is, but it's kind of a fun image, and I thought it would be fun to paint. It shouldn't take too long, and one of the things about doing these demos is not boring the audience to death, so I do want to try to make it move along a little bit. Um, so that's what we're going to work on. Um, this is my painting area that I'll be working from. I've got a sketch partially done. And, oh yeah, it's Point Pinos. Somebody said, that's the word I couldn't remember. Point Pinos Lighthouse. That's correct.
Pacific Grove.
Yeah, right in Pacific Road. Joe, who is in charge of the workshop out there, he said, if you're interested in the workshop, email me at registrar@californiawatercolor.org. that would be the place to go. Or go to the website, you'll find it there as well. I also have it on my website. I posted it already today, so that would a link there would lead you to the California Watercolor Society, Watercolor Association. Anyway, and there's see, this is kind of fun. I get to see all these notes come up. There's Terry from San Diego Watercolor Society. Okay, I'm going to start painting. We'll have to just jump back and look at those notes later. I'm going to start with a wet into wet approach to this. I'm going to put some water on this whole thing and do some color. And I want to try to keep the water from getting the paper too saturated. And I will go through some of the points. I'm sure I'll get some questions. Cindy will monitor and shout out some questions to me as we go. This paper is 140-pound Arches cold press. It's a I use a variety of different papers. I can show you a list of those here in a minute. But the it's a 12 by 16 sheet. I started cutting my paper to a size that the image is 12 by 16, and so I can, if I choose to, I can varnish the painting and put it in a frame without glass. So that's another whole topic of discussion, which now I'll get questions coming across about that. There are a lot of people that do that, and now and a lot of different website, YouTube videos about how to do it and so on. So I'm not going to get into the details on that right now. Maybe at the end I could talk about it. So we're going to put some color on here. I've got it wet, not too wet. I have another camera angle here. You can see that the water is it's a little shinier at the side, and that's, of course, that's what you want to look for, is how wet is that paper, and how much color, how much pigment now I put on here is going to affect the color. It's going to affect the end result, because there's now water there. I had this nice watercolor pigment in my water in my palette, and then I'm going to add it to water. So you definitely are diluting what you've got. I'm going to put some warm tones on this side of the painting, because this is where I have the impression of light coming across. The sun is coming from the right side. And I'm going to put a little cerulean over here. Not much. I don't want much color. I want to have it kind of the way it is in the photo, with a very little actual coloration, mostly just toned a little bit. And I might just have a little bit of red coming in over here. Have some clouds. It might be a little late, and we've got some of that same color then bouncing into these little rocks and so on over here. I'm going to tone back some of this on the sides here.
I have a question.
What do you have for a question, Cindy?
Is the reason for a dark line in the lighthouse versus the cliffs, is that for emphasis in the lighthouse? I guess it's in your drawing part.
On the drawing,
there's a dark line in the lighthouse cliffs.
A dark line. Okay, I'm not sure the question, but I've drawn the image very loosely. A little bit of detail on the cliffs, a little more detail on the lighthouse itself. No detail at all on where the trees are going to go, because I don't want to have the drawing dictate where I start and stop a tree once I get going. Am I painting vertical or flat? I have a little bit of a tilt to it. It's on about a 2-inch riser, so it gives a little bit of a slant to it. So I'm looking at this to see how wet it is. I want to put some little wispy clouds up into the sky, and I will do that when it's still damp, but I don't want to go in there when it's too wet. It can be a problem trying to get some clouds to work. I don't want a lot of cloud. I want just a little bit of an indication of some clouds coming across. I want it to be pretty hazy, and I'm probably going to have the lighthouse somewhat subdued and in with the trees, maybe a little less than the photo. If you look at the photo, the value of the lighthouse, even though it's a white building, it's much lighter, much darker, I should say, than the sky. The sky on the photo is really your lightest value. So the building and all the trees can be in almost a middle value, but I don't want them too strong. I want it to bring more attention up into here. So I'm going to work on these clouds. I like for a lot of things. I like this this brush. This is a Neef Australian-made rigger. It's a long handle. Usually watercolor brushes aren't this long. And it's a long rigger with these tack-on fibers, which kind of, you can get a nice rigger kind of line with it, or you can spread it out and get a pretty nice uh, sprayed, splayed um, um, kind of brush fiber that will make a cloud work pretty well over here. Now I want a little warmth, but mostly just a gray, and I put a little bit of different colors on my brush. Try to let it have a little variety. You see, I'm spreading that brush out quite a bit, and I'm taking some of the paint off with a paper towel. So I want these clouds to come in from over here. Let's just try it over here and see. Might be a little darker than I want even, but it'll get lighter. And these clouds are going to be these really fluffy, wind-driven kind of things that are going to come across into here. And probably not too much going on anywhere other than just on that side. I think that's kind of what I had in mind. Now, there's going to be trees in here. Usually the clouds are going to go back in the distance and give me some depth, but I'm kind of losing that into the fact that I have this these trees going to be coming up into there. I might have to have a little something up in here just to break this side up a little bit. Okay, well, I don't want to mess with that too much. I want to just let it be. This is, and that'll settle down. It'll be a little lighter as I get into this other stuff that'll be a little darker. And I think we're in good shape there. So what I'm going to do, I want to dry this with a dryer, but I'm going to wait a few minutes and let it just sit a little bit. Maybe I'll ask or answer a couple questions.
Will you be posting the link of your painting when you're finished?
A link of this. This Facebook feed and this YouTube feed will be there. You can find them later. Once they have time to process, they'll be available. I will also provide it to the CWA as well for your uh, YouTube page. Um, so yeah, and as far as the painting itself, I'll probably post that on um, my Facebook page, assuming it turns out. um, okay, not too many questions on that. It looks like so far. I didn't put a lot of color down in here, but there's a little bit, which is fine. I'm good with that. I'm going to turn the microphone off so you don't have to hear the hair dryer. So it'll sound, there won't be any sound for just a little while here. So I see a question about the watercolors and the paper. So I will, while this is drawing a little more, let me talk to you a little bit about the materials and stuff. This is the list of the watercolor paint colors that I use. Many of them are Daniel Smith, and some of them are other brands. I use my burnt sienna is a Winsor Newton. I like their burnt sienna better. I have a couple other colors. I like some M grams pretty well. I have some Holbeins. Most of these down here on the bottom that are the opaque paints are Holbein, except for the titanium buff, which is an American Journey, Cheap Joe's American Journey paint. So those are the colors, and you can find those on my website if you look for the, well, they're always there whenever somebody signs up and looks at my page to sign up for a workshop. Um, so those are the colors. Let's see, turn that off. My brushes, kind of a variety of brushes. These are some of them. Um, the uh, mops, the rounds, and then a variety of others. I'll be using a little bit of a small um, hake brush here for some of these trees. Um, kind of use whatever works to make the marks that you need. It's kind of one of those things where mark making is really a big part of this process. And then my paper, like I said, this is 140-pound cold press arches. I use rough sometimes, Saunders Waterford sometimes, Fabriano sometimes. For my portraits, I'm going to use 300-pound hot press arches because I like the lack of texture. It helps when I'm doing eyes and things like that to not have that get in your way. Okay, let's come back here. Other questions are coming up. Let's see. Um, Looks like I got most of that answered. Okay, I'm going to now. I could have done the sky and kept going right into the trees while it was wet and worked on it that way. I chose to cover the sky first to get those clouds in, and now I'm going to do the tree bank and the building itself, And again, I could have worked my way down on all of that, but I sort of decided that this would be a good way to work on this one here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to, and I'm going to try to keep, if you look at the photo, it's the photo that I used to put the trees in there was they were pretty hazy, which is very typical, of course. So I'm going to try to keep that that appearance. And one of the things that I'll do with that is I'm going to use some opaques in there, some opaque titanium white watercolor, perhaps some lavender watercolor from Holbein. It's an opaque kind of a blue. Um, and I might use those. Depends on how it looks. I've got to. The clouds are a little darker than what I was thinking they were going to be, so I've got to have this kind of hold up to that. So I'm going to start with a little bit of. I'm going to put a little mist up in here. I'm going to keep this all dry below, but I'm going to sort of mist this part up in here and just get it a little bit wet. I'm going to make a stew. I work from a stew of colors that I create. Whatever I'm painting, it just becomes this. I start off with a pure color, and then it becomes a color that I can't describe. So I just call it a warm stew or a cool stew. So my stew to start with is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue to get me some nice grays. Since it's kind of a bluishness to all this, I'm going to stay with a lot of the ultramarine blue at this time. Put a little bit of quinacridone gold to green it a little bit. So we'll probably do some green in there. Let's just see how dark this is. That's maybe a little too dark. And I need a little more water in it. Good. That's good. That's good. So I'm going to try to create up in here. There's going to be some tree. There's going to be some there. Some of this is going to have that kind of windswept tree shape that's on there. And some of these trees, this little hake brush can give you a lot of nice effects. I do need to get some whites in here, some of that opaque white to kind of tone this back a little bit, make it a little bit softer, not so dark. Parts of it can be, but I kind of like the effect of that haziness that we've got going there. A little more blue. Let's see. Need some blue in here too. And there's, these trees. They grow a little bit randomly, so you can let the watercolor do its thing. Up in here, there's this nice batch of tree shape up in here that goes right up around the building. And I like that to kind of give a little shape to the edge of the building. It helps to play the positive against the negative here. So there's going to be a little shape here that might get a little darker depending on how I see it eventually here. Now there's some darker notes in some of these areas here. They overlap dark and light. So I'm putting that in. It's wet, so I'm putting wet into wet on some of this area. Just changing the colors a little bit here and there. So a little more green in this right in here. I need to take a different brush. This is a Velvet Touch, Princeton Velvet Touch long round, and it's got a nice thin point to this long round. Now, right along in here, I have this fence, and on the photo, it's a rail fence, I guess you call it. And I'm going to just turn it into a picket fence, just for fun, and to you know, gives it a little more of an interesting texture and a linear repetition. One of the principles of design, is repetition. So when you have a chance to do some repetition, do it. And I'm going to break this so it's not a fence all the way through here. I'm going to make it vary a little bit, and I'm not going to carry it all the way out to the end of the cliff here. I'm just going to show that, and I'll repeat that over here into this area on the other side over here. When we get into the building itself, I'll have some pickets there. So we'll put a little more dark into some of these. Usually what happens is if you're in trees, forest, anything, even cityscapes where you have buildings, there usually is a darker value that's created as you get closer in to the bottom of an area, whether it's the street and the level of the street, or whether it's the lower in the tree, the forest, and where where there's more, the light doesn't get down into it as much. In other words, I'm just dropping in some more pigment into some of these areas just to give it a little more depth down here, a little more variety. This is getting a little bit dry up in here, so I'm going to turn this into a shape of a tree. Just let it be a little more defined right in there. Kind of a tree. Not have too much detail over in here. I think I'll take a chance here to soften some of these edges so I don't really attract too much attention to this side over here. Now, I kind of feel like my shape of this got a little symmetrical. I don't know if I should. There's always that challenge when you paint as to what is the next thing you want to do. Do you want to continue with something or leave it alone? Scott Adams, who is the creator of the Dilbert comics, he is quoted as saying, "Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, but art is knowing which ones to keep." And that's one of the things about watercolor, particularly, I think, is knowing which ones to keep, knowing when to stop. I guess I could quote Kenny Rogers, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So Cindy and I have been playing two-handed pinochle during this COVID thing, and she's got me down by about 7 games here. That's not nice, Cindy.
Say, do you use synthetic brushes or real brushes or both?
I use mostly synthetics. I have some of these are probably squirrel in the mops, but all the rounds are all synthetics. I do have some others, some sables, but I don't really use them. Okay.
Michael's mind is in painting and all that is involved in that, and then switches to the other side of his brain and is doing all this technology, so it's easy to beat him in pinochle. Of course, he would just say it's all my skill, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We have fun.
Okay, so I'm going to go continue on and do this building. Now the building has again it has a tone over it. It's not as light as uh, ha. Cindy, your niece is on here. Your niece is Jamie. Don't encourage her, you guys. She'll start telling Laffy Taffy jokes, and then we're in trouble. All right, I'm going to make a nice uh, dark stew here. I'm going to probably use a little bit of neutral tint, and I don't want to make this lighthouse stand out too much against some of these other things here, but it is the hero subject of this painting, so I better treat it with some respect, huh? So I'm going to go a little slow here and just get a couple of details on this. I'm not going to worry too much about it if I get it perfect. And we have these verticals here, and we have a big area here that's where I guess it's the actual light itself. And we have.
Michael, what is the neutral tint, and why do you use that neutral tint?
What is neutral tint? Neutral tint is I guess some people would use Payne's gray or other blacks or grays. Neutral tint is just a neutral gray. It's almost a black, um, but it's very neutral. Now the I love the colors that um, we have. M. Graham makes. However, they make a neutral tint is not a very neutral color. Unfortunately it's got a lot of um, it's kind of violet. It isn't neutral enough. It shouldn't be that way. I don't know why it's that way, but all right. I'm gonna so this is to me it's too dark, and there's a haziness out here, and I'm gonna take some of this opaque white again. I'm going to drop some of that in to create some opaque, a little bit of hazy grayness to this particular shape that I've already painted in, and then drag it down a little bit into some of these areas. There's the roof line here. I need to try to figure out how to keep from losing that. Now, I'm usually a painter who does a bit of layers, so I don't always I don't always paint, a real direct approach and then fill in the gaps like some people do. I tend to try to do a bit of layers, starting with my primary, my light layers and values, and work your way darker. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tone on here and see what I end up with, and see how it fits into the scene. It's a little more gray. Let me put a little bit of this opaque lavender in here for fun. Let's just see. That's a little more like the color of that it appears in the photo. A little bit of a cool. I kind of like that. So the British were keen on using body color, they called it. They used a lot of opaques into their paints, and it gave them the opportunity to do that, to apply something that would keep um, keep the pigment from just when you go light in value, you just have so few particles of pigment, is what I'm trying to say. Trying to paint and talk at the same time.
You're doing good.
It's a difficult job.
You're doing it.
So there's that. I'll put some more details in there as we get further along, but that's kind of the main shape there. And I'll leave some of that light on the building. I might tone it back where the light would be hitting the roof, or I might put a little color on it since I have this pink and reds over here. Now I have some foreground trees over here that I need to get in here. Let's put a little bit of mist over here, and go back to my Hake brush. Go back to these stew that I have, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. Put a little bit of green tone into it with some of this. Either use quinacridone gold or a combination of quinacridone gold and burnt and ultramarine blue, which is really the Daniel Smith's version undersea green. Now, I don't want it to be too obviously green, but I guess it fits in there. It's mostly blue. We're okay. I put a little bit of the opaque on my brush here. So these trees come up, and you know they're these wisping. I don't know what kind of pines these are. They're beautiful. The wind takes them and drives them into these shapes. Okay. So this tree here comes out over the front of the building. Now it's pretty wet right now, so I probably need to wait a little bit. And we have some tree trunks coming off some of these. We could indicate some of that, maybe. The windswept trees. And then we also have a little bit of a strength of the shadow, which should come right off of that. There's some shadow coming off these trees, creating this like that. And then back in here, we're going to have to, somehow we're going to have to show some of this joining right into these this fence, perhaps. All right, I need to step back a second and take a look here. Okay, I think we're good. Oh, Richard, you joined us again. Thank you for coming on. This is Richard. If you don't know Richard, he's from Arkansas and is a phenomenal painter. You all should know who he is. He's been painting for a long time. This is Cindy's niece. Got to pop her in there just to thank you for commenting. Appreciate you joining us. That's a lot of fun. Carol says gorgeous, so I guess if I got the president's approval, we're in good shape here. I think it's coming along. I'm happy with most of it. I still think this tree shape right in there, even though it's kind of what's on the photo, a little clunky to me, and maybe I'll have to fix that later. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. And this tree now in the foreground, it should be a little darker, I think, so I need to put a little more value on this. What I try to do is to work couple of different things into my paintings that are pretty key to building a depth and depth in a painting, bringing that sense of realism into a painting. Um, and what I do is I want to use aerial perspective, which you can see with the distant things being hazy and then the foreground things being darker, which is what I'm going to try to do here, bringing things forward with lighter values in the distance and darker in the foreground. And then also linear perspective where that's possible. There isn't much of it, although the clouds can create a little linear perspective, or this cliff here can create a little bit of that. And then I also talk about and try to utilize what I call solar perspective. Now, that means I'm going to try to tell the viewer, tell you, the sun is coming from where, the light is coming from where, and I want to make sure that you know that. And so by having this warmer tone over here, you already have a sense that the sun might be over here. And if the light is on this building, you know the sun is over here. And if the light is on these cliffs, you'll know the sun is over here. So if I give you 3 or 4 clues, um, that should help, or a shadow coming off of the tree. Any of those things can help give you that sense of where the light is coming from. Now, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have them all in one painting, but if you can get them all in, that works. Sometimes it just isn't possible. You don't have the sun, shining, so you don't have shadows, so it's harder to do. Sometimes on a hazy day, it's the light is coming from everywhere. So a little darker here, just let that turn into a shape. Still a little wet right in there, so probably lost a little bit of the shape there. And sometimes I just like to drop a little water into an area and let that do the work. Pull a little bit of water and just drop the water and let that reshape the pigments instead of trying to brush them around too much. Sometimes that works. And in watercolor, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, I think I've got the bulk of the background done. I can put a few more, put a few details on this building here to sharpen that up a little bit, but I think it holds it pretty well. I think the colors work pretty well. Kind of a subtle tones. So I'm going to work my way down to the foreground. I'm going to start back here, and I realize this part here can take quite a while if I go too slow. So I'm gonna start into the back here and try to get that done pretty quickly. And it's got to be a little bit lighter. It's going to be warmer, so I'm going to put some into my stew. I'm going to take some of the burnt sienna in there, and I'm going to just place some of that color in kind of rapidly, get some texture into it with some marks that happen, and can have a little bit of the raw sienna, and it's going to come right down to this portion of this cliff right here. And because it's a distant thing, I'm going to put a little, this is the titanium buff opaque. I'm going to push that back and not have it too bright, because this raw sienna can actually, it's a yellow basically, so it can be kind of a little bright and kind of come forward quite a bit. So this whole area right in here is an area that shapes a rock here. It's a little bit more on the cool side. It's down in the sand. I'll leave a little bit of an edge there, but I'm just going to go around that rock a little bit. Okay, that'll work. Don't need much detail back in there, and I got some interesting things happening with that opaque in there. Now that doesn't always dry the same way it goes on. I don't know if you can see it when I hold it up closer. Um, let's see. It's not really showing up very good. Um, okay, so that's the distance there. Now I'm going to get a little more detailed and stronger as I come forward. But I've got a section all the way from about here over that's somewhat the same values. It's sort of a middle value. It too much doesn't have too much of a it's got contrast, but the real darks start up in here. So I want these rocks and these darks here to bring your eye up and around. So this is my purpose in that. So I don't want too much detail back in here. I want it to be a little bit uh, under, a little lighter in value and not quite as detailed as this foreground stuff. So here I'm going to take a flat brush and starting in here, I'm going to use it to paint the angles that I'm looking at here on these on this little what you call this. I guess it's a leave a little bit of that light to shine on these the rocks. But I want to make. I'll probably go over that with a value at some point to tone that back. I don't think I want to leave that much light on it. And there's a bit of a grassy green looking stuff in here. Don't want to get too carried away again with the colors. I want to keep it pretty subtle. Let's see. Lift a little bit of that back. It was getting a little too dark in there. Now there is take a little sepia or neutral tint, one or the other, into my stew here to get a little dark. I want some darks on this. There are some darks on this edge of these some of these areas here. There are some definite darks. This rock has got some definite darks in here. And a little shadow coming off. Now if I was going a little slower with a pointed brush, I would probably carve these a little more carefully and get more individual ones. But I do kind of like just the simplicity of the shapes forming. And I can always use a little scraping tool to kind of put some of this back. Make some of these marks back into it if I lose them. Okay. Those might have gotten a little dark back there, but that's okay. I could even well, say that, and I can go in and I can add some of this opaque again right into these because it's don't want it to be want it to be darker, but not as dark as what's going to be up here. So it's probably okay just to do a little manipulation of that. All right. There's some nice oranges in there. And there aren't any oranges anywhere else, really. So I've got to be a little bit careful with that, I guess. But I think a little of this can add a little bit of a color note in here that's there. And I think it can help to liven it up a little bit. Okay. Now these rocks up in here are going to get much darker. And so my value range then is, I got my lightest lights, middle values. Now these are going to be my darks. So I try to work in 3 or 4 values maybe. That's at least in my mind. That's what I do. Doesn't always work out that way. Okay. So this is a large rock shape in here. Jagged edged. And this comes down and through there. If I can keep some of these areas pretty, a pretty nice even tone with a little gradation to it here and there, that can really help pull things together. All right. And here's another rock here. Pretty thick paint, probably the consistency of a cream, a thick dark. If there was such a thing as dark, like chocolate syrup. How's that? Which makes me think I'm hungry all of a sudden. You guys out there in the West Coast do realize that you're cutting into my bedtime here.
I'm going to keep them up.
It does happen that I'm going to shift in and put a little of that orange into here, just because I can. And take my brush full of water and just make that gradation happen. Start off with the dark pigment and then lighten it. I need to soften an edge up here just to get a lost edge. Okay. So that was kind of fun. I think I need a little dark on the bottom side of this now, though. See there? Drop in some darks. Now, okay, up here, there's going to be some darks. Let's do that a little bit more, a little cooler. Cooler up in here. Um, let some of these join together and mingle a little bit, create some interesting space. Also, while this is still wet, drag some of this down, create some interest in like some other rocks, as if there's rocks down in here. There's a rock, a larger rock right here with a dark side to it. It's and there's a couple more up here. Now I'm going to be selective and try to find a few um, rocks that I eliminate. And I also need to think about my composition here. I don't want to paint this as dark as on the photo over on this side over here. I want to try to create this. I want this to be a little bit more of a subtle transition here to the outside. So my darks are in this area right in more in the center of interest right in here. So let's see. I'm going to take my stew again. And I'm just going to start up here and put more water. Now that part up in there has this orange and green.
I like that color. Other people are too.
Which color?
That foreground color right there. Those rocks are looking good. You're rocking it. The rocks.
Rocking it. So now I can make this area up here a little darker to kind of transition into the darks that I've been doing. Like I say, I don't really want that part to be as dark in here as the other portions. This color is kind of nice. There's got to be some this stuff going on over here. Some dry brush. Well, as dark as I have that one portion there, I need to bring some of that darkness into here. Now that it's wet, you can let the paper and the pigments do their thing with a little wet into wet, and that'll give a nice transition off to that side. And I don't want this light over here to be white either. I want this to be toned. I don't want your eye to go over there. Okay. So this is this rock here. There's another rock shape here. I guess I could Okay. Um, I should have, I'm going to just miss that a little bit and see if it's still wet enough in here. I should have done some manipulating of these flat areas when it was a little bit more wet than it's dried a little now. So just taking a edge of a palette knife here. I like the flat nature of it, but I also feel like it needs a little bit of the texture of the rocks just to kind of make it honest. So I will use a palette knife to create rocks in their entirety if I have the right situation. You can easily make rocks come to life with a little scraping here and there. Like this part right in here could probably just create a new rock right there. There we go. Let me do a couple of other small rocks in here. Looks like we have one here. On the photo, there's some rocks in here. I'll just use that. But I don't necessarily have to follow that. I want to position them in a way that helps the composition here. I'm really just painting the shadow on the rocks right now. It's more of a where the effect of the light hitting the rock, not the rock itself so much. See some of these rocks over here, I haven't painted the rock yet. So drop in a little more pigment, lower part. Make some more things happen here. Let's get a little bit lighter value, and we need some of this again here, this dry brush. I need to tone this back over here. Let's see. I've got all this violet up in the corner, up in the painting. I'm going to put some violet down on the bottom as well. Make a little violet stew up here. And just tone some of this back. Use some of that same color that's up on the top to help push this from being so bright in that corner. And I think even up in some of these areas it would work really well up in here and some of this. A lot of this is just the way the sand and the I think all violet is good. A little bit more down in here. right, let's see. What do we got? Looking at your questions here. Looks like y'all are liking the rocks in the foreground.
You're rocking it.
Cindy says I'm rocking it. Um, yeah, I use the palette knife a lot for rocks. You can, and in this case here, it's not exactly the best situation for it. But if I were to have wanted to get this whole area real dark, I would have just put a matte. Now, even with it a light value like this, after that dries, I could put a whole dark area over it, and then go in with the palette knife and just scrape and create the whole texture in the rocks. And you would think, I mean, it's an easy way to get back. You put some darks in, and then you can pull it back to a middle value. And especially if there's color underneath it, you can go back to that color. And I could do that over in here, but I still think I want to keep that value light in there. I don't want to get too dark. Although I see, looking at it, a lot of times I have a monitor in front of me here that I watch. Well, actually, I've got three of them. I got each of the feeds going in here, and I've got the one that I'm working off. So I look at those, and I can kind of tell what you're seeing, I guess. But I look at them, and I also know that I see things that, well, I would like to fix that, or I need a darker value there, or things that just sort of appear. And when I if I do the right thing, and I look back up at the monitor and I go, yeah, that worked. And sometimes it doesn't always work, but the nature of watercolor is you have to be bold and brave enough to do some things that you might not do if you just took your time and were painting away. And I'm doing this in a relatively fast pace to provide an interesting demonstration for you. So the chances of me making an error are pretty good sometimes. I like to think I know where I'm going with these, but it doesn't always happen to work the way you want it to when you're doing demonstrations like this. And I've come to the point where I'm good with that. I'm good with the fact that sometimes things don't work, and I'm willing to share that with people. Um, if it works and works well, you know, that becomes a very fresh and spontaneous sort of painting. If it doesn't work well, it's more of a disaster then, I guess. Not every painting is a great painting. Putting a little bit of lighter green back in here just to kill some of that white there. I think I'll put a little bit of warm tones on these rocks that are catching some sunlight here. Put some on and then lift some back if it seems to be too much. So we have a few things up on the top here. I'm going to take take some of my neutral tint, and I'm going to do a few things into this. Some sketchy marks. There's a railing across here. a window here, a window there, doorway. The distance, you don't need to make everything very detailed. Now, I could put a little more detail into this distant low area of the trees, but I'm not sure I want to. Kind of like the haziness of that. Um, this big dark there is bothering me a little bit. Let's do a little more dark around it and bring it some of the other stuff a little darker so it isn't so big and isolated. So while that's sitting and drying for a second, let me uh, the I have a series of my online workshops that I've put on my website available. They're the edited down versions of these four two landscapes, a waterfront and a person. And they're $35, and you can stream them as long as often as you want. So those are available on my website. Um, the I'm also doing another workshop, a mini workshop, sort of like this, about 2 to 3 hours long, on Saturday at noon Central Time. So California folks, you have to get going a little earlier, but that's coming up. And of course, then the for you all in California or the California Watercolor, you could be anywhere, I guess, in this case now. But as part of the California Watercolor Association, they've booked me to do this workshop, a Zoom online workshop, 2 days, 9 to 4. So it'll be a morning and afternoon session each day, and we'll cover some different paintings each session, and with exercises and fun stuff to do. But Cindy would be there to hand out candy and things like that if we were there locally. But you're gonna have to bring your own to that, I guess. So
Bring your own snacks, plenty of chocolate.
So anyway, let's go back to this and finish this up. So if you have any questions about those things of mine, you can find those on my website. Typically, they should be there. Sometimes I say they're there and then they're not there. There was a drip of water I had left right there, and it turned out to be a nice spot to just do a little wet in the wet. So I'm just putting a little bit of an edge there. There's some little darker value along that edge, and don't have to get too detailed with it.
Question: how do you know when too much versus not enough? How do you determine that?
How do you know when too much is versus not enough? Well, there's a part of this whole painting thing that, there's things that I like to be able to teach, and I teach, techniques and value, and how to think through a painting and approach it and different things like that. But there's a place where you can't transmit anymore. It's about sort of the intuitive parts of painting, and each person has to have that. You develop it by doing, by trying things, by experimenting. So, to answer the question,
know when to hold them and when to fold them.
Know when to hold them, know when to fold them. That's right, Cindy. Yeah, it's just a matter of sometimes just saying, if I do any more, it's not going to help it. So, and that's probably as good an answer as any. If you come to a point and you don't see anything that will really help this thing develop, then step away from the painting. That's right. I'm going to put a little. I think this needs a little, little shrub or something. So I'm going to put a little something back behind this fence right in here, just a little shape. some kind of a shrub, or this is just a green that I pulled off the palette there. Just to break up this back there a little bit. Drop in another little darker note into it. Let it bleed down a little bit maybe. Okay. So this particular painting, you know, again, it's the question really was, no, when do you know when it's done? I think you know, I could go on for quite a while if I wanted to. I think I need to put a little bit of value onto this light area here. There's sort of this sandy color over there, and I probably need to be a little warm. Let me put a little, use this stew over here that's already got some oranges in it and see what that looks like. Using this flat brush, little dry brush feel. There's just enough going on over here to just work with that, I think. And I'll put a little bit of that over here as well. I think I heard my wife yawn over here.
Sorry.
So, and there's this, you know, what do they call it? Flotsam and jetsam, and, you know, stuff that washes up on the water. And there's things, you know, that you can put in there. Also, a lot of things, different techniques and textures and things you can use. Now, I'm looking at this area right here, and I still think I need a little more to that. So I'm going to use some of the same color that I was just doing down there. I'm just going to put in a few more breaks into this, just to break it up a little bit. I think that might work. And a few more darks maybe down on some of these, make some of these rocks a little more pronounced here. Let's see. The distance over here, I don't know if I want to do much there, but let's say, for instance, something to break it up a little bit. So we have a flagpole. It looks like there. Where'd my? There it is. We're going to put up a flagpole here for sure. That's got to happen. And so we're going to do that a little higher than what it is on there, and maybe in a little different spot. We're going to go up here. And I think we need something over here, like as if there's I don't know if there's some kind of a flagpole out there, but just feels like I need something over there. I don't want to put a dead tree. Something to break that up. Oh, maybe not. So let's just say that this we got ourselves the the American flag here. So that's just a little swish of the blue field, and then here's a couple of swishes of the red. Don't need to do a lot. I'm going to take a little moisture on my brush and just melt some of that together, make it look a little bit like it's maybe blowing a little bit, and not just lines that I drew. I always end up with some splatter that I accidentally get on the sky. So those, like that one there, they turn into birds. I always have to end up with a few birds, which is appropriate in this environment. We got
Weren't there a lot of
seagulls.
there?
The seals we saw on the coast. I mean, down further. But we saw a lot of sea lions, I guess they're called, aren't they?
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah, they were kind of fun. I'm going to put a little more value right in there to separate that from the this the roof could be a little warmer, just to get the idea that the sun is hitting a bit of warmth. A little dry brush, a little texture, a little color on it. The sun coming across and hitting this picket fence, depending on where it is, I've kind of left it pretty light, but we could show some shadows hitting it from the trees. You don't have to be too careful with it. Just give it the impression that there's some light is hitting those things and creating a little casting of some shadows and stuff. Makes it interesting. Adds another little interest to it. This foreground here needs some texture to it, so I'm going to take a toothbrush, make a nice wet puddle here, and I'm going to splatter some gravel, some sand, some ocean stuff into this area. And you can manipulate it with a brush. You can join it into other things, so it isn't just a bunch of splatter. And you can do different colors. We can go in with some other colors. We can go in with some more things. I can go in with some opaques, with some whites. I'm looking at this side over here. Even though I like the lightness of it, I think I need to just give it a little bit more of an anchor here. Yeah, I think that works better. There's always, like I say, the flotsam and jetsam. Is that the right word? Flotsam and jetsam?
I think it's called seaweed.
You think it's seaweed? Seaweed and sticks and driftwood. There's always stuff.
Shells and rocks, yeah.
Stuff that comes in. So one of my last step in my process that I go through is I have 2 DVDs, 7 steps to portraits and 7 steps to landscapes. I put up by Creative Catalyst. The 7th step is to sign it, take ownership. This is your painting you did on a particular day. And you just claim it for what it is. So let's, I'm going to take this off of the board, take the tape off, take a look at it here. I do apologize to you CWA folks and to Carol for the mix-up on the sound on that. I was trying to get her in and make the announcements and things, and I had not done that before. I should have tested it more thoroughly, I guess. I thought it was working. But anyway, that happens sometimes. So, so this is the final, at least the final for now, and you can see it's got some interesting things going on. I think I got this by itself a little bit too dark right there. I'd like to fix that perhaps, but we'll see. Carol mentioned this is the if you want to join CWA, there you got the opportunity to do that. Oh, Carol also had an idea of adding a windsock. Yeah, windsock, like a real orange one. That would be really cool. Probably do that on a different painting, but this is good. You have any other questions? Getting some thank yous, which is nice. I appreciate that. If you have any other question type things, I can gladly take a look at those. But we're getting lots of comments.
Carol said it wasn't her idea. It was somebody else's.
Oh, well, okay then. There's Pat. Pat, sorry, I think I cut you off from earlier on that face or that Zoom thing. Anyway, Nell Williams liked it a lot. Love the colors on the rocks, and I kept them pretty subtle, really. But you know, color is really a cool thing when you're doing rocks and things like that. I've done several paintings with rocks, and it seems to be a favorite. I don't know why. Rocks are something people like to paint and sometimes have trouble with. Why did I choose to go light on the roofing? Well, I did it because I was when I was painting the dark part of the top, I wanted to paint around things. I wanted the shadows to be the the middle value in darker areas. So by doing that, in order to keep the roof visible in the sense, I wanted them light, and so the light, so it would indicate that the light is hitting it. Now, I could have done them dark. I could have gone dark like the photo, and it would have been fine. I might look at it later and say, no, they should be dark, you know. So,
what size is the painting?
This is a 12 by 16 painting, 12 by 16 image size.
4 by 6 image?
No, 12 by 16.
Yeah, painting.
Mm-hmm. Somebody says, how often do I use greens? I used to really hate greens, and I've gotten to where I try to keep them very simple. I use a lot of the same colors, my ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and then I add some quinacridone gold and shift it to a green or a blue green or a brownish green, gray green. Try to do that without too much vivid colors and other kinds of greens typically. How long to do my average landscape pad? I'd say, well, this is pretty quick, but it's not too large. But these smaller ones I get done in about um, oh a couple hours, 2 3 hours typically. Um, that's kind of the way it works for me. Um,
Michael, do you use a low heat when you use your dryer, or
um, no, I keep it my dryer. I have it fairly hot, but the um, um, what am I trying to say? I I try not to push it too hard into the to let the motion of the air move the paint. I don't want to do that. So um, kind of keep it back a little bit. And I like to wait until it's somewhat set by itself before I dry it. But I do want it dry before I go in with the next layer. Um, there's a question about more information about the workshop. And then check either go to my website or go to the CWA website and you'll find out
it says
more.
register at CaliforniaWatercolor.com.
CaliforniaWatercolor.com. There you go.
Register.
Jackie Wacker, she's from here, one of the locals. Thanks, Jackie. That was an interesting comment. Walt said, I seldom use some of those colors, and this has broadened my view of colors. Well, that's good. I mean, every time you watch somebody paint, I think that's part of it. You watch and learn, and you go, what is it that they do that would work for me? I've simplified a lot of colors, but I don't use all the ones that I have on my palette either. It just seems like there's some that I love for certain things, and others that I end up, you know, avoiding eventually. It's kind of funny because,
Question?
yep.
How do you leave the white between your cliff rocks? Someone said you do that so skillfully. Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, I see the comment here. That is leaving the white between the cliff rocks. Just really, that's about painting around the stuff, painting your sections, painting little shapes. You don't need to paint everything on the painting, on the surface. You just paint the shapes. So there was an underpainting of some color in my first wet in the wet wash. So when I went in next, I painted the next value and left these areas. I just painted the shapes of the big shapes of the rocks, not getting hung up in all the smaller areas. So what is the opaque violet color? Uh, the colors on my paint box are I'll show you this part. I think you're asking about these here. So this is the titanium white. This is titanium buff. This is a Juan Brilliant 1, Juan Brilliant 2. These are Holbein. This is a Holbein Lavender. And this is a Holbein Verditer Blue. It's a little different blue. It's almost like a cerulean, but it's opaque. So they're on my list. If you go to my website and go to one of the workshops, there's usually a link there to the list and my materials list and all that if you're really interested. Um, um, love that I added the fence. Yeah, the fence. In the photo there's a rail fence. It's kind of a long horizontal, but and I could have done that, and I have done that before. But there's just something about picket fences that kind of work for this kind of thing, and it's just kind of nice. I'm looking at it now that I see it. I'm looking at it on the screen, and it looks a little bit bright. I did put those lines across it of shadow, but
How do you keep your paint from drying?
how do I keep my paint from drying? Good question. So I put a sponge in my palette when I put it away. That's damp. I also, if I'm traveling, I'll close it up and put it in a plastic bag um, and keep it sealed. keep it moist that way. And you could do that at home. But I also have a large size box that I bought that's really meant for acrylic paints to keep them wet. It's like a big Tupperware box, I guess. And I can set this in there, and I can put this moisture in there, and seal it up, and it stays moist. You don't want to, if you don't paint often, then things can get a little moldy actually. But you shouldn't let your paint sit that long anyway. But and so another thing about keeping them moist, if you for a long time I used quite a bit of the M. Graham paints, and also Shimke. Anyway, M. Graham paints have honey in them. They're made with honey, so they stay moist. You don't have to worry about them getting dried out as much. So that's a pretty nice thing. And they have great colors. They're wonderful.
And Cheap Joe's has great products.
Cheap Joe's, good place to buy products.
Question about
How do you use the opaque colors? Well, I use them in the end when it's dry, and I can put them over the top of other colors. I can use them for little highlights and things like that. But I also mix them in this case here, using them to create a misty haziness into the distance and give you that depth that I wanted in it. So this clouds and the lighting give this an emotive quality I'm loving. Thanks for the demo. Thanks for the compliment. That's great. Yeah, I love the feel. Getting a little bit of a feeling like that. Cindy's getting a thank you from Trina. Shout out to Cindy. What brush was I using for the trees? I think most of the time I was using, and I did the trees back there, I was using this little hake brush. These are those little cheapo sort of Japanese. This is a Dick Blick Series 292 made in Japan hake brush, and this is a small one. I've got some bigger ones, and I've had one that I think for 40 years. I've had one I've totally worn out in 40 years, but they'll last a long time. Yeah, somebody asked about the mildew in your paint. I don't have a problem with it because I keep painting. I paint often enough. If I had left them sitting too long, yeah, they could get mildewy. Another thing about the honey-based paints is if you do a lot of plein air painting, you'll find that the bees like your paint palette quite a bit too. If you're afraid of bees and don't use honey-based paint, I guess is the moral to that story. So anyway, I really appreciated being with you all. This has been great. I do want to thank some of the people that I get supplies from some of these folks, and they help me with my paints and so on. I want to give a thanks to them. Thanks to the California Watercolor Association. It was great. Really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all and spend the time. Hopefully you'll join in again, and we'll do the workshop maybe. If you want to do that, get in touch with WA. There's the website right there, and you can also, like the bottom note says, they're still accepting entries into the national exhibition. So that's an opportunity to submit a painting. That's always a good thing to do. Well, have a good evening. Appreciate you all. Those of you out in the California area, we were praying for you all because of all this smoke and fire, and then of course the Gulf Coast has been hit too. So a lot of things to lift up. So we're just thankful for you and for your joining tonight. Bye.